All right, Chromebooks up. I'm gonna let you log in. Let you get there. Okay, it works. Sometimes large files don't come up with computers. That's why I want to make sure.
W or M.
Out of extra pencils.
Not gonna play a game after
All right, death, destruction, assassination, conspiracy, all this and more. Where we're headed today. President Truman through Johnson. This is how far we'll be going today. So I hope you're getting tired of seeing this picture. If I get tired of it, it's because you got it memorized already, right? If you got this memorized, then you can say, Swanson, I'm tired of your picture. But Truman through Johnson, 33rd through 36th President of the United States. Now, we have talked about many aspects of each of these men already. I have fitted into the Cold War or domestic issues. I'm going to remind you of some of those things along the way, but, and then I'm going to add some kind of specific, maybe individualized circumstances that fits into their presidency as well. So if you're following the unit, we had international issues. Obviously, the presidents contributed to those. Domestic issues, how the presidents fit into those. And then now we're just talking about each man along the way. And if there's a couple of extra things that fit into his presidency, that's what we're going to talk about as well. So presidents of the Cold War era, presidents of the modern era. Where does our class stop?
Obama.
All right, Obama. But I'm going to throw at you some President Trump and President Biden facts as well. Not in our class content. Okay, I'm being real specific on that. Perfect example of where I don't want you to waste your time studying Trump and Biden. It won't be on the exam. However, it is the history that's closest to us. Of course, I want to teach you about relevant history, so I'll throw in a little Trump and Biden as well. So in terms of your notes, the first block that actually says the man's name, I want you to write down this right here. This is kind of the laundry list of what they did, the whole entire list of what they accomplished. So where his picture is and the wide open space, you write down the laundry list of what he accomplished. Then, obviously, certain ones are going to be a little bit more specific, like on Truman, I'm about to elaborate on the GI Bill. So just so you know, that's where we're going with the notes. And in terms of your own brain and studying and memorizing, I hope you can associate these big items with the man. And then and some of them should already have information that we talked about going through your brain. Others of them I'm about to talk about. So that's where we're going with that. Truman, he is Franklin Roosevelt's vice president. He becomes president when FDR dies in office. When he becomes president, he's pulled into a side room and told about what? Hey, Mr. President, we got this new weapon called atomic bombs. Now it's your decision whether we use them or not. So he drops the atomic bombs. He certainly wrestles with it personally, morally, but he does it to end the war. And we read some of his primary source writing about that. He has the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan fits into the Truman Doctrine. Of course, all of that states that we will support countries threatened by communism. We will draw the line. We will support them financially. M&M, Marshall, and money should always be the connection, especially to our friends in Western Europe, those who fought the war alongside us, bruised, battered, broken, bombed out. We're going to send money to help them get back on their feet. One of the plays out of the playbook is containment. This is all stuff we've already talked about. I hope it's ringing a bell because, I mean, I can open the container if I need to. Austin, we remember containment?
Yes.
What is containment?
Putting a lid on.
Containment is the lid. Going to put a lid on communism or draw the line. You shall not pass any farther than this. Countries that have fallen to communism, they're drenched, they're soaked, can't open the lid or else communism may spread. But we're going to not let it go any farther. Truman gets us involved in containment and action in the Korean War as well. Super notable, something we talked about yesterday in terms of a domestic issue or civil rights, is Truman's integration of the military with Executive Order 9981. So these are things we've already talked about related to Harry S. Truman. You now have basically a baseball card on this first little spot where his picture is. If you can almost like cut that out and call it a baseball card. It's all of his statistics. Oh, got a couple pictures along the way there as well. Money and containment. Put a lid on communism. Now, the GI Bill. GI Bill is something that also fits under Harry Truman, happens inside of his presidency. So now we're going to talk about it specifically. Officially, it's called the GI Bill of Rights. And that name kind of invokes a thought process back to what? Bill of Rights, the actual Bill of Rights, right? But a GI, what's a GI? Maybe that's what we need to define. GI Joe is exactly right. So therefore, what's a GI? GI is slang for soldier. GI itself means government issue, and a lot of items that were being sent overseas for the military, whether it was equipment or food or uniforms, whatever, the boxes were stamped with GI, meaning government issued. So the nickname for soldiers becomes GI. You are government issued, right? You're just a cog in the machine. You're a GI. The slang extends even farther with GI Joe. That is to just say random old soldier is a GI Joe. Of course, you guys know the cartoon and the movies that come off of GI Joe. So GI Bill is for soldiers. It's the GI's Bill of Rights. As soldiers come back home from the war, they need help getting back on their feet. They're leaving a job, right? They're essentially leaving a job in the military, so they need a job. To get a job, some jobs are available. Other jobs require a college education, so the GI Bill is going to really focus on college education benefits for soldiers returning from World War II. Also, these people need a place to live. Many of them are getting married and wanting to start a family. And same, the economic side of things, obviously houses cost money. So it provided low-interest homes for soldiers returning from World War II. Two main components, assistance in college and low-interest home loans for soldiers returning from World War II. This is something that I personally benefit from to this day. I am attending Liberty University Online on military educational benefits. Formerly known as the GI Bill, today it is morphed a little bit. It's called the post 9/11 GI Bill, but it's still, the language is still there. It's the GI Bill. It's educational benefits that come from being in the military. Started in World War II, following World War II, extends to this day. I personally attend college, master's degree program on the GI Bill. Additionally, the low interest home loans thing, me again. Our families bought 2 houses on a GI Bill loan, GI Bill loan. So you can really only carry 1 loan at a time. This is a little bit more than you need to know. You carry 1 loan at a time. So we bought 1 house, we sold the house, right? So now we're not carrying the loan. We bought another house. Our current house is on a GI Bill loan. It is a lower interest rate than you would get from Ag South, FNB, Pineland, fill in the blank, regular lender. The GI Bill is backed by the government, so therefore the lender has faith that they'll always get their money back, even if the homeowner goes under or fails to make payments. Since the loan is backed by the government, the lender is willing to extend that credit a little bit more willingly. So suffice it to say, lowest interest rate around. No one competes with the GI Bill loan. If you're able and eligible to get it, you use it. So 2 mega perks that are for veterans coming back from World War II. The picture you see here, shall I go back to school? Obviously, it's to inspire young men to go to college. A lot of these guys may not have gone to college in their former lives. They might have been farm boys, maybe never really thought they'd even leave the farm. The war takes them around the world. They come back home to new opportunities. Hey, I'm going to be a college man now. So a lot of these guys had opportunities that they may have never had otherwise, thanks to their service. Here it actually is. He's pointing to the GI Bill of Rights. What I was trying to get after was that is a connection to the Constitution's Bill of Rights, right? It's like outlining what a GI deserves to have thanks to his service. Important because it held off a potential post-war unemployment crisis, let people go to college and get educated and get higher level jobs instead of just being a bum on the street. Consumerism expanded and people started purchasing want items that we've talked about, that if you have more money available, right, you have a line of credit, you can purchase those want items. And then the GI Bill helped drive the post-war economy and rewarded veterans and their families for the sacrifices made during the war. Bottom line, it was a perk. To this day, where we have a volunteer military, it's kind of a selling point. Hey, join the military and you'll have these benefits. At that time, people were drafted into service, maybe unwillingly, but they were drafted into service. So this was the nation saying thank you on the backside. So whether it's a perk that gets you to join in the first place, or it was a thank you for serving, that's what is the GI Bill. Questions? That was a Truman brain dump right there. Most of his content we've already gone over because it fit into the Cold War. All right, moving on to my favorite West Pointer, Dwight David Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a 5-star general during World War II. He was the leader of the Normandy invasion. D-Day is the nickname, or Operation Overlord if you're really into military history. He, as the president, he brings an end to the Korean War. So he is in office at the end of the Korean War. Although, is that statement accurate at all? End of the war?
No.
War is over? Yeah, why not?
Because it wasn't a war.
It wasn't a war, and it ain't over. That is why the screen says an armistice. He ran into the war in as much as he negotiated the armistice, which set the 38th parallel as the dividing line north and south to this day. Something we're about to talk about for him is the National Interstate and Defense Highway Act and McCarthyism. McCarthyism isn't something Eisenhower is so-called responsible for, in as much as it just happened during his presidency. So we're going to talk about it happening under him. Military man turned president. So one of 2 West Pointers to be president. There's a Navy guy that's president. We'll talk about him. I'll highlight it. I promise. 1956, President Eisenhower provides funds for the construction of 42,500 miles of roads throughout the United States. This is not just building highways so that you can get to the beach faster. It's not building highways so you can go cross-country road trip into Las Vegas. The purpose of it is for the military, and that's why the full name of this act is the National Interstate and Defense Highway Act. At the time, it's hard for us to understand because that is not the case today, but at the time, the country had 0, count them with me, 0 4-lane highways. Roads that connected the country were 2-lane, often unpaved, dirt, dusty at best. Two-lane roads, I can't even use the word highway, but when the military needed to mobilize, they needed to get to port cities or to airports, they needed to drive their trucks to the port to put them onto a boat to go across the ocean. 2-lane highways weren't cutting it. There were major traffic jams all across the country. Military equipment was held up. Dangerous 2-lane roads, not wide enough for 2-way traffic, especially involving military vehicles. So the utility of this was actually for the nation's defense. He had a very long vision. We need to build a better highway system so that in the event of a future war, we can actually mobilize our military faster. So as nice as it is to get on an fill in the blank, 95, 40, 10, 20, whatever interstate you get on, as nice as it is to get on that and drive fast, the purpose of it was actually for to support transporting troops around the country in the event that they needed to mobilize. The picture you see there, has anyone ever seen that on the side of a highway? Blue sign, white writing. I bet you have. You just haven't noticed it. So now I'm going to challenge you next time you hop on an interstate, whether you're popping into Savannah or Jacksonville or Daytona, if you hop onto an interstate, you're going to see a sign like that. And when I say interstate, I mean a road that starts with an I and a number, okay? Not just state route, whatever, but I fill in the blank. I'm going to show you a map of our interstates in just a second. You will see one of these signs about every 10 miles. I don't know the exact frequency of them. I don't know how they decide where to put these signs, but these signs are all along our interstates to indicate that it is a part of the Eisenhower interstate system. Kind of a bit of a tip of the hat to the man, actually, honoring the president with his name and the signage all around the country. And then I think the logo they chose was very unique. They could have gone with maybe a lot of different logos to represent Eisenhower, but they went with his 5-star rank. So that is what the 5-star rank in the military looks like. I told you it's not a rank that exists to this day. The highest rank is only a 4-star rank in the world today. So I challenge you, next time you hop on an interstate, it'll be on your right-hand side as you're driving. Look for a sign like this. Pretty much said most of this already. The old 2-lane system of roads was inadequate as the country grew. New routes and wider roads needed to be constructed to connect population centers around the country. It was useful for the military, and that was the original motivation. However, there's plenty of other social impact, like connecting the outskirts cities, which gives the rise to what is known as the suburbs or suburbia. No longer do people have to live in the city to work in the city. Now they can take a step back several miles outside the city, what we call the suburbs, and drive into the city in a timely manner. That's where, suburbs of Atlanta like McDonough. McDonough exists. A lot of people work in Atlanta but live in McDonough. It's a 25 or so minute drive from Atlanta. Could you do that on a dusty 2-lane road? No. But this system of interstate and interchanges and connected roads allows you to live in a suburb, work in a city. So kind of gives people the ability to spread out. Take it way back in our American history. No longer do you have to live in the tenement living just to go to the factory, come home, go back to the factory, right? Now you can actually build a life in suburbia. So the rise of the suburbs, rise of suburbia. This is a pretty tame intersection right here. That's a lot of roads, but that's a pretty tame intersection. Anybody know the mega one in Atlanta? What it's called? Anybody know what it's called? I should pull up a picture of it. You don't? Anybody ever heard of Spaghetti Junction? Yeah. I should pull up a picture of that. I should slap that in this presentation. Spaghetti Junction in Atlanta is a cross interchange of, I can't even count the number of roads. And the reason it's called that is because it literally looks like just a bowl of spaghetti. You look at a bowl of spaghetti and you see all the noodles going all the different directions. Spaghetti Junction in Atlanta is just multi-interchange exchange. So, yeah, a really an awesome modern marvel, the fact that someone built something that complex and that cars can drive on it pretty seamlessly. So this was completed in the year 1956. It was 50 years old in 2006, 50th anniversary. So that makes it 65 years old today. This is what the interstate system looked like in 1972, I believe. Okay. And at this point, there's 42,500 miles. Like this was the original plan. This is how it expanded in 2006. Okay, so this is the 50-year anniversary, and you can see it added just a few miles up to 46,000 miles at that point. These are the interstates I'm referring to. Oklahoma perspective, I-40. Everyone, you want to get through Oklahoma City, you're driving on I-40 or I-35. I wonder how the numbering system came about. Anyone want to take a guess? What's that? So some of the, Austin, you're observing that some of them end in 5 and some of them end in what? 0. Good. So you want to make any more inferences? Any more guesses based on it? You're about to have an aha moment.
Wait.
You've been riding on these interstates your whole life. You're about to understand it a whole lot better. Not related to that.
The direction it goes.
Yes, tell me more.
The fast go north and
South, and the other ones go that way. Yeah, Mama told me that.
Excellent. So this represents the east and west interstates, and they go. They end in 0. They actually also high numbers start in the north, and it ends up with a lower number in the south. So it's a very organized system. It is not just random numbering of the roads. High numbers ending in 0 in the north. Low number ending in 0. Anybody ever ride I-10 into Jacksonville, into Gulf Shores, Alabama? And these go east and west. Then interstates ending in a 5 run north and south, and same system, low numbers starting in the west in California to the higher numbers coming to the east, which is why we have I-95. Right in Savannah, you got I-95. What's that, Sanaa?
You know how I say like lane being in California, you're like, yeah, I'm going taking the
I-5, yeah. So the more you know, not the most interesting of factoids, highways, but impact, huge impact to our country, okay? And our class is all about the impact and influence that certain legislations has had. So National Interstate and Defense Highway Act, pretty important in that regard. McCarthyism, so not something Eisenhower created necessarily. It's not related to his name, but he leads through it. It's an issue that he has to lead through. McCarthyism itself is the practice of making accusations of disloyalty and treason, especially related to communism. So anybody think of a similar thing that we've already come? Boom. Communist. Prove to me that you're not. If I say you're a communist, and especially if I'm a person of influence, and I printed it in a newspaper, I say that so-and-so is a communist, Prove to me that you're not. Good luck. Just like the Salem witch trials. And when we did our little simulation in class, how many witches did we actually have in class? Zero. Harrison misunderstood me. So a lot of times this is referred to as a witch hunt, and that the heritage of that name does come from the Salem witch trials. The way it got its name is from the senator who was leading the accusations. That is Senator Joseph McCarthy. And this is a time period often called the Second Red Scare as well. So Red Communism, Red Scare. About 1950 to 1954, Senator McCarthy had he had more power than he needed. Okay? He had more power than he deserved, and he was able to call people to testify before the Senate, and he could accuse them just at whim, on a whim. Accusations were very often unfair, without evidence, but as soon as an accusation was thrown out there, you know what? Try to prove that you weren't. McCarthy himself was later discredited, and the fact that this is called McCarthyism is kind of a derogatory phrasing. McCarthyism is a negative thing. So if ever someone has too much power or an unchecked power, is able to make accusations or cancel people with on a whim, we should be concerned. We should be concerned with who is giving that person power. Why are we believing them? What is the long-term impact of those accusations, especially if they are untrue? Not to say that zero communists were found in the process, but by and large, the number of people accused was not as many as those that were actually found out to have communist ties. An industry that was targeted specifically, anyone know or want to take a guess? Hollywood. Yeah, a lot of Hollywood actors were called or accused of being communist sympathizers, Communist Party members during this time frame. And a lot of them were blacklisted, or today we might say the phrase canceled, because of such.
Wow.
So why or wow?
Wow.
Why were they accused of this?
In Hollywood specifically.
Good question. First of all, a lot of them actually were former members of a communist party. Communist Party used to be a political party. People would legitimately register as a communist, card-carrying member of the Communist Party. Communism was a political ideology before it morphed into that extreme and tyrannical version of socialism. So some of these accusations were founded by people's former ties to communism or the Communist Party. There's legitimately an American Communist Party. However, many of these people distance themselves from that former association, but the problem was once associated, always associated. And McCarthy, he rises to power by claiming he has a list of 205 card-carrying communists employed by the government. He says this without offering proof at first. So he's given the power to run these Senate hearings, and in the end, it's a big power grab by this man. He wanted to matter. He wanted to be influential. Do I think that he was trying to root out communists in the government? Maybe, but I think he also liked being in charge. And definitely, on the backside, many of these being unfair and unfounded, it was a negative time. It was a negative time in American history because of the accusations flying around. Christy, thought or question?
We learned about McCarthyism in American Lit. We had to compare it to
Okay.
And when you said the list, I have a paper, but anyway, it read that this list he had, apparently the number would just randomly grow and shrink as if he was just taking his names
That's right.
and taking them out.
And it was his power that he was infatuated with. He wanted to be in control. I'm very glad that you have some crossover connection there. Is that Miss Carter or Geraldo? Both of them maybe? Carter do that as well?
I don't think
Geraldo?
I did that.
Cool. Well, whatever. I'm glad there's that crossover connection. So we'll take our pause. It's our time. When we come back, we'll talk about this handsome gentleman right here. Oh, he's so pretty. Muy guapo. Very handsome. You don't need a rain. That might be part of your problem.
What?
You don't need a rain.
It's a thing.
That might be part of your agitation.
I want her to fall. What if she falls?
Interstates are not interesting. John Kennedy is. I promise.
I don't know, but she didn't give any information. You wanna go sit in the window and sign up for that thing, the pageant thing? How am I gonna do that one? Oh, that one, yeah. I mean, I will walk, but we can dress up. We can all work together. Maybe that's possible. For some reason, like,
I'm gonna be
no.
responsible for like a ball or something. I should get hands to do it.
No, he literally grabbed Mark. He said, "Who's that?"
Yeah, say it again. I was with Chandler. I was talking to Chandler. Haley's hand. Do you feel accomplished after all?
Do you feel accomplished now?
Yes, I do. I'll let him plan that out perfectly.
Let's go. Let's sleep right now.
It's been.
Definitely out there. I have a man crush on Voldemort Zelensky and John F. Kennedy.
That's a little pervy. Yeah. He really bothers me. Hey.
Alright, so I'm being a little silly about how handsome John F. Kennedy is. Doesn't matter what I think. Yes, we thought he was handsome, dreamy, good looking. Everybody. How about that? Everybody. Enough of an everybody that he was able to win the election largely based on his appearance, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Can we watch the presidential debate on the two? Right now.
So, in your baseball card spot for John F. Kennedy, right, the 1960 presidential debates, they were televised, and that is a word on the screen. That's important. First time ever, televised presidential debates. Kennedy is the one who establishes the goal to put a man on the moon by the end of the 60s. We have already talked about that. Cuban Missile Crisis. Anybody remember Sanaa launching warheads at the USSR? I went back and watched the video. Didn't quite make it. But the Cuban Missile Crisis, that is a conversation we've already had. That was under him. I'll review that. He advanced civil rights, and then he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. It's a terribly tragic story that we will talk about kind of at length. And I do have some primary source footage, video footage, that you may or may not choose to watch.
Oh, I want to watch it. Right?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
it's one of those kind of videos. Now, this was just mentioned, I believe, and maybe it's because you saw it on the screen. JFK had, what kind of a reputation did he have? Bit of a womanizer, a ladies' man, and a cheater, because he did it outside of his marriage as well. Yeah, so he was not known to be of upstanding moral character, or at least when it comes to fidelity, faithfulness to his wife. However, he was a leader that led well on the world stage, led our country through some significant issues. So there's the trade-off, right? I'm not telling you what to think about it. You may say he did a good job with certain policies. You may say, what a terrible guy. He doesn't have any character or values. There is, I'll tell you the juicy side story. There is allegations that he had affairs with Marilyn Monroe. Now, this is the second time we've talked about Marilyn Monroe, because we first saw her as a Rosie the Riveter when she was a 19-year-old Norma Jean. Yeah, she's been in all four parts of history. Now, why do I have happy birthday?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so this is at an event. It was a concert. It was a concert for the president's birthday. And she comes out on stage and delivers this very sultry, raspy, sexy version of Happy Birthday, Mr. President. And just suffice it to say, there was tension in the air. And many people led many people to believe the accusations of them having had an affair, even a sexual affair, in the past. So Marilyn Monroe is not the only woman where these accusations were flying around. In fact, many of them are founded. All right, I'll say it is a fact that John F. Kennedy had affairs in and around his marriage. So however that affects your thoughts of him, that is a fact. She dies 2 months after this photo is taken. This is the only photograph of the two of them together on this particular night. Actually, I think it's the only photograph of them together ever. They're not posing. He doesn't have his arm around her. In fact, they're almost ignoring each other, right? Which is often, sometimes is the case when you're actually more connected than you want people to know.
How do you know?
She died 2 months after this. 2 months after this, amidst accusations of an affair with the president, what do you think people start to wonder?
Did he kill her?
Did he have anything to do with it? Rumors are out there. It is unfounded. Okay? Rumors are out there. It is unfounded. She died of suicide, but she died of a dosage of sleeping pills that was just really off the charts. And some people say she couldn't have even swallowed that many pills, right? She wouldn't have even been able to swallow that many pills before she fell unconscious. So it is iffy circumstances, to say the least, right? I can't adjudicate the case. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have forensic evidence. But the reading I do shows that it is inconclusive as to whether the Kennedy brothers had anything to do with the death of Marilyn Monroe. There's more palace intrigue surrounding it because Kennedy was known to hang out with Frank Sinatra and his Rat Pack. The Rat Pack is associated with the mob and organized crime. And by the way, his brother is the Attorney General of the United States. Robert F. Kennedy is the Attorney General of the United States. So the Kennedy family is certainly connected in power, and if they needed to cover up a crime, they kind of had the means to do so. So I don't know. I'll leave it to you. Just like, is Hitler still alive? Did he escape to Argentina? It is one of those history's mysteries. Historians believe, historians arrive at a conclusion, but conspiracy theorists are always out there. So I'll just leave that to you. What do you think about Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe? All right, 1960 presidential debates. Now, first things first, you can see that it is in black and white. Okay, it is not yet in color. However, it's notable that it is the first televised presidential debate in U.S. history. It was actually a series of 4 debates, but one of them was most significant, kind of had the highest viewership overall. And on this particular debate, Kennedy comes off as more physically appealing than his opponent, Richard Nixon. So we've already talked about Richard Nixon in light of the Vietnam War as well. We know that he loses the 1960 presidential election because he wins the 1968 presidential election. But the television here is what boosts Kennedy's popularity and arguably leads to his victory. So a bit of a colorized photo here of one of the debates that they were in. What this leads to, televised debates, is an emphasis on appearances and an increased focus on appearances. Today, think about how many people try to put only good pictures into social media or doctored, edited, Photoshop photos into social media. Celebrities want to hide bad pictures and then take it to politicians. Politicians want to put their best foot forward, their best face forward on photographs as well. So this really changed how politicians communicated. No longer was it just a person's voice. No longer was it just their message or their platform. It was how they looked on TV, how they connected to the viewer on the other end of the television in their own home. Something like this, President Roosevelt in his wheelchair, he could not have hidden his ailment in this time period, right? It wouldn't have been possible. The number of cameras always readily available, he wouldn't have been able to hide his ailment in his wheelchair. So it's definitely a new day in politics because of this. So let me tell you the story of the most formative debate. In one of these 4 debates, so Nixon had recently injured his knee and he was hospitalized. He was coming off of a time period, he's a little bit ill, he's a little bit sick, so he wasn't kind of at his physical peak. He also refused to wear stage makeup. Even though the lights were going to be bright, many actors, of course, being involved in television, they routinely wear stage makeup. He refused to wear the stage makeup because it was unmanly, would have been effeminate. But on the other hand, it actually worked to his demise because he looked bad on the screen. Kennedy, on the other hand, he spent his days tanning. He was physically fit and strong. On the day of this particular debate, Nixon stays up studying all day long. He's studying his notes. He's getting ready for his responses, right? He's being a good candidate. He wants to have a good spoken word. Kennedy spends his day on the hotel rooftop sunning himself, getting bronzed, right? Looking good for the cameras.
Okay.
So Nixon arrives to the debate looking haggard. He has a 5 o'clock shadow, right? I don't get a 5 o'clock shadow. A 5 o'clock shadow means your beard is kind of grown out at about 5 p.m. that it almost looks like you haven't shaved all day, or you didn't even shave at all in the morning. Haggard. He looks haggard. He looks rough. Versus John F. Kennedy, who is so muy guapo, muy good looking, on this particular presidential debate. So it was a big example of how television changed presidential debates. Now, this is an irony. This is not in your notes or this is not on the screen. Got a couple pictures here. I think you guys have been flowing through them already. An irony here is that during the first presidential debate, the first of 4, and this is the one that really highlighted their appearance differences. Kennedy's running mate, which is Johnson, Kennedy's running mate actually doesn't have access to a television. I think he was in a car at the time, so he wasn't watching TV. He only listened to it. He thought Kennedy lost the debate. By hearing the words alone, he thought Kennedy lost the debate. But the viewership that actually sees the man, they actually paid less attention to his words and more attention to his appearance. And that is how the country really saw that Kennedy won the debate. So the take there is that if you're to take their words alone, Nixon came off as the better candidate, the better debater. He spoke better of the policies, but Kennedy looked better. So you can certainly take this into the modern, where the presidential debates are almost like a primetime television event these days. I distinctly remember Trump versus Hillary, right? Those were fun to watch, and then Trump and Biden as well. Kind of like two old men just jaw-jacking at each other. The first debate, Trump and Biden, was terrible. It was like the two guys in the Muppets that just, top of the theater jaw-jacking at each other. Point is, this is the first of the televised presidential debates.
Can you for checkout, please?
Always, Haley, always. Good classroom. Sorry there, The point is that this changed television for history, changed campaignings forever. Okay, it was a game changer, and it put a focus on appearances. So, told you a couple of interesting extras there. Already talked about Kennedy as setting the goal for putting the man on the moon. In light of the space race and the advancements in science, math, and technology, NASA is created. So, Kennedy himself didn't necessarily pass the laws for NASA, but NASA is created in light of the space race. Kennedy establishes this goal in 1963, but he gives it a lengthy period of time, right? He says before the end of the decade runs out, and we go to the moon in what year?
69.
That's right, skin of our teeth. July of 1969, the decade's about to run out. However, we do make it to the moon in July of 1969. Cuban Missile Crisis, this is what we've already talked about. We went to the gym to kind of demonstrate why it mattered that the Soviets were going to put a missile so close to the United States. And the reason for that is this range ring right here, right? A short range, medium range, long range missile could have a great, could reach most of North America, Canada, Latin America as well. So big takeaways here is that Kennedy was at the center of the decision making during this time. 13 very tense days, and the movie that comes from it is called 13 Days. And it was the president and his inner circle that were making decisions. They didn't consult all of Congress. It wasn't a military action, so they weren't consulting generals necessarily. Kennedy and his inner circle were making all the decisions, and it ends with the conclusion we had in the gym as well. Good for the new goose, good for the gander. Move out of Turkey, move U.S. missiles out of Turkey, move Russian missiles, Soviet missiles out of Cuba. So I do find it kind of an American arrogance that we were really upset that they were going to place a missile in Cuba. But by the way, we've had missiles in Turkey the whole time. So they're just, in a way, the escalation was very rational. Economics will talk about rational thoughts next year. So that's the Cuban Missile Crisis. Not going to hang out on that one too long. And you didn't have a blank to be writing that down because you already have. This shows the president talking to the country during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Again, just the advent of television. Television changed the landscape. Television changed a lot of things related to consumerism, related to politics and campaigning. So take ourselves from the telegraph to the telephone to the radio to the television to the what? World Wide Web, internet, right? So I mean that's a natural progression in technology. I know we're talking presidents right now, but you got to be making that connection as well, because all of those things influenced everything along the way. All right, let's talk about the spicy one. Let's talk about his assassination. Happens on November 22nd, 1963. So he is in a re-election cycle. He's preparing to be actively running for re-election. That's why he visits Dallas, Texas. Texas was going to be a very important swing state. He needed to carry Texas to be re-elected. So he's doing some basic preparation and campaigning. Let's go wave to the people of Dallas, Texas in an open-top convertible. What could go wrong? Anybody want to make a comparison for me?
Thank
Thank you. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is exactly right. So the impact, the results are, of course, that Kennedy is killed, and that means Johnson becomes president. Kennedy's term is cut short, but his legacy lasts on forever. And in fact, there's a whole saying: you either die a hero, or does anybody know how to finish it?
Live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Do I think Kennedy would have become a villain? I don't know. There's my answer. I don't know. But he certainly died a hero, right? He died at a peak of his popularity. He died before a lot of the allegations of infidelity and mafia connections really came out. He died at a peak of power and influence. And with such, the country carried on in the space race, carried on in the civil rights movement. What if he had been reelected? What if he had a downturn in popularity? How would we think of President Kennedy today? I don't have the answer because I don't have a time machine. But yeah, he definitely died at a peak of popularity, died a hero. A lot of photographs that come from this particular incident, to include some video that we'll look at. So this is how it all started. They land at Love Field in Dallas, which is the Southwest Airlines hub today. I've been at Love Field before. They leave the airport and they get in their open-top presidential motorcade because Dallas loves me and I want to wave at everybody I see. His wife, Jackie, who was a very formative first lady, very feminine, very transformative to the American style. She was a style icon, and she's wearing a very iconic pink dress on that day. A bit of a zoom in. You see, of course, there's Secret Service with him. This is the governor of the state of Texas, okay? So there are other dignitaries with him. We have already made the connection to the open-top convertible ride of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie. I don't know why people walk around in open-top convertibles. Doesn't seem to make sense. Well, when the shots were fired, I'm about to show you a video, shots were fired from this building right here. And that window, right where the arrow is pointing. That is the 6th floor of what is known as the Texas School Book Depository Building. And the assassin's name is Lee Harvey Oswald, if you choose to believe he's the man who shot Kennedy. Why do I say that? Because there's plenty of controversy surrounding the identity of Kennedy's assassin. And here's where I'll kind of leave it at. A lot of people couldn't believe it was possible that a lone gunman could take down the president. So if it's impossible for a lone gunman to take down the president, he must have had accomplices. In fact, he probably had whole organizations behind him and supporting him. I think people just can't believe that one gunman did it. Evidence tends to point towards Lee Harvey Oswald as being the shooter, but people always want to bring in some extras. It was the mafia, it was the CIA, it was the Russians. There was more than one shooter. We're gonna look at the only footage of the event here in just a second. So Lee Harvey Oswald, he's in the 6th story of this abandoned building. This building is on the parade path, so the street right in front of the building that you see on the screen there, that is the parade route. The route was published in the newspaper. Not unlike Archduke Franz Ferdinand's 60 years before, 40 years before. This is a recreation of the angle that the shooter would have been at. And then I really like this angle right here. That's like literally behind what would have been the angle of the gun. You can see he shot to the back of the vehicle, just like those vehicles are driving away from the angle. He shot into the back of the vehicle, which is why the bullet entered the back of the president's head, pretty much opened it up and blew his brains out is what happened. There were multiple shots fired, so the president was not hit with the first shot. He was hit with the second shot. The governor of Texas was also hit with the shot. Why do we think Lee Harvey Oswald could have done this? Well, he was a trained sniper in the United States Marine Corps. He was trained in the U.S. military. However, he was radicalized by communism. He was a communist sympathizer. He's the kind of person that McCarthyism should have rooted out, not all the false accusations that came otherwise. This is a picture of the spot where Kennedy was shot, and this is what it looks like today. There's not some mega memorial there. This is the building, okay? This is the window right there. And this is the angle I have. This is the angle that the shot came from. This is where the first shot was. And then farther on down the street, there is another X for where the second shot was. The shot that actually split his brains open. This is Casey Mason standing. This is exactly what people do. They wait for a break in traffic, they go stand on the spot and they take a picture and then they jump back. So the building would have been basically back at this angle, but the girls just went and stood on it right there. There's a side conspiracy about the grassy knoll, a little grassy hill off to this side right here. I don't have a great picture of it. There's a little grassy knoll that a lot of people think a second shooter was hiding in, but that's based on unfounded eyewitness reports. People are like, I saw someone scrambling into the bushes. There's a lot There's a lot that goes into the Kennedy assassination. There are records that are still sealed to this day. So there's a grand mystery, and welcome to human psychology, where we don't have information. What do we often tend to
Make it
do?
up.
Yeah, fill in the gaps with what we think makes a good story.
Isn't there like a?
So at this point, I'm going to show you the video of Kennedy's assassination.
Oh,
I'm going to give you the blood and guts warning. Okay, this shows a man's head opening up. It is a real assassination in U.S. history.
Why is this a big part?
I don't know.
It's been a big.
You may or may not choose to watch this.
I may.
Honors kids.
I want to watch
But
it.
I
I
don't.
want to watch it.
All right, first one is a compilation, and then the second one is really slowed down footage.
Have you done this for you?
Oh, they videoed it? Yes, they're really slow.
Yeah, so let me, okay. I'm sorry, I'm making some assumptions here. I apologize. I assume you know certain things. Let me explain it. This video footage comes from the type of camera that's like really old, 8
I wanna
millimeters.
see the
so like,
umbrella,
you like hear the clicking of the film a little bit. It's called the Zapruder film because the man who filmed it, his last name is Zapruder, Abraham Zapruder, and it is the only known footage of the moment of the shot. These days, of course, right? Everybody's their own eye recorder. Everybody has their camera out. This is the only footage of the shot. As soon as the event happened, Secret Service and/or FBI pretty much found Abraham Zapruder and said, "We need that footage. We need that film." So it is released footage. It's not something that they redacted or anything like that. But a lot of people are like, "Why did they grab the film so fast? What were they trying to hide?" There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into the Kennedy assassination story. It's one of those things I wish I had more time for. So this is what you're about to watch: the Zapruder film. This is the compilation first.
U.S. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy's visit to Dallas, Texas on November the 22nd, 1963 was aimed at boosting his re-election bid ahead of the 1964 presidential vote. Thousands turned out to see the iconic leader and his wife Jacqueline travel in a motorcade through downtown Dallas. At 12:30 p.m. local time, as the president's open-top limousine reached Dealey Plaza, 3 gunshots were fired at the convoy. 2 bullets hit the president, 1 wounded him at the back of the neck and throat, the other caused a massive and fatal head injury. The president was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. in an historic announcement that stunned.
Off to the right is the
A
side
government
knoll.
investigation found the shots were fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository by 24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald. But the suspect was never tried. 2 days later, he was shot dead by local cabaret owner Jack Ruby during a prison transfer. The fact the identity of Kennedy's assassin was never proven in the courts has given rise to various alternative and unproven theories as to what really happened and who may have been behind it. A House of Representatives report in 1979 concluded there was a high possibility that 2 gunmen were involved.
JFK to cover it up. 'Cause he was fixing to
That
run
is
out.
like the best 1-minute summary ever. Obviously, there's much more that comes through. Okay, this is the more graphic footage, and I'm just giving you the upfront warning. This is the more graphic footage.
Fun.
This version tracks the limousine and maintains President Kennedy and Governor Connally at center frame. This version is only in slow motion.
Oh.
Yo.
So then his wife jumps up. What she's doing is reaching for a Secret Service agent who's getting into the vehicle. Obviously, the vehicle is speeding up. And they race to the hospital. It's called Parkland Hospital.
Can we watch that one more time?
Nope.
Why?
I had to watch. Hey, in that one video, it said he got shot 3 times.
He got hit twice. There were 3 shots. He got hit twice.
President Kennedy and Governor Connally at center frame.
There's a little bit of a jolt in his body, and it's the second one that opens his head up.
Okay, so
Stop saying it
why
like
didn't they
that.
speed up the first shot?
Yeah.
There's the first shot. He's grabbing his neck.
Reload.
Wow.
Did the governor? I think that hurt. Did he?
I don't think he killed it.
So the governor was hit with one of the shots, and I'm sorry, I don't know which one. The governor was hit kind of a grazing blow.
A second one.
Yeah. Now, part of the conspiracy, or part of the questions towards is there a second shooter, is that to trace the angles, and I really just can't speak authoritatively on all of it, to trace the angles of some of the shots, there are questions about how could it have followed a certain path and struck him like it did, and as such, it's called the magic bullet. Basically, they say, how did this bullet travel through Kennedy and then also hit the governor? It didn't. There was a second shooter from the side. So there's a theory called the magic bullet. Bullets don't bend in the air, right? Bullets go straight. So the theory is this is impossible for this shot to have happened. And if you want me to believe this, you're saying that the bullet bent around Kennedy to hit the governor. That's not the case. There's a second shooter. Plenty of documentary footage out there. I'll give you this upfront disclaimer, right? I told you blood, guts, assassination, the kind of stuff you guys are interested in. There is a lot of bad information out there on the World Wide Web, right? There's a lot of conspiracy stuff. If you're starting with Ranker.com or Board Panda or TikTok, I would question your sourcing. There's plenty of good information out there. Look Board, huh? It's a bad Board Panda. Terrible source. Never go there. It's like trendy headlines, clickbait type stuff, right? What I'm saying is there's good sources, there's bad sources. Look for a balanced approach. Look for a source that says evidence points to this. Some people think this because, right? Look for that balanced approach. Anytime there are questions about an event, our brains are going to fill in the gaps in ways that we don't, with the story that we want to be told. This is, so in the aftermath of the shooting, they raced to a hospital that's called Parkland Hospital. There's actually a movie called Parkland, which is about the story of the doctors attending to the president on that day. Zac Efron's in it, so I know I got some of your attention there. At Parkland Hospital, this is Jackie and Robert Kennedy, okay, the brother. Jackie is still wearing the outfit she was in as her husband was shot, and she hasn't even done what? She hasn't even cleaned off. She actually did that on purpose. She later tells the vice president's wife, who was named Lady Bird Johnson, she said that she wants them to see what they've done to Jack. A lot of people think that statement, they have done to Jack, implies that she knew that there was a conspiracy to kill her husband, whether it was the CIA or the Russians or whatever. Her statement, I want them to see what they have done to Jack, makes a lot of people wonder what she knew. That's his nickname. Like Jack is sometimes a nickname for John. Yeah. It just is like AK, right? It's a nickname. Jack is a nickname for John. Immediately following, okay, they hadn't even left Dallas yet. The vice president is sworn into office on Air Force One. President's body isn't even cold and out of the morgue yet, and the vice president is sworn in as president, standing next to whom? The widow of the president who just died. Like, what a traumatic day for her, to say the least. So, there's again, she knew that these photographs would go all around the world, and she wanted her bloody outfit to be in those photos. She wanted them to see what they've done to Jack. This is Lee Harvey Oswald. This is the assassin, or the alleged assassin. This is what happened to him 2 days later. The man holding the gun is a bar owner named Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald in the middle there with the contorted face, he's being basically taken into court, right? He's being moved from one place to another. He's got a Texas Ranger law enforcement officer holding his hand. His hands are cuffed. Well, security wasn't that great, obviously. Jack Ruby basically comes out of the crowd, puts a gun in his gut, and fires the gun a couple times, and Lee Harvey Oswald dies. This contributes to the conspiracy because now the alleged assassin isn't even around to stand trial or to account for what he's done or tell his side of the story, anything like that. He got erased. He got silenced. A lot of people say, why would Jack Ruby even do this? He's a mild-mannered man. He's not been known to ever be violent a day in his life. A lot of people wonder why Jack Ruby was the shooter for Lee Harvey Oswald. The story grows, right? The intrigue grows. But this is what happened, and the video said it pretty well. To this day, no person is held accountable for the assassination of President Kennedy. Lee Harvey Oswald is accused, and many people believe that he's the assassin, but to this day, no single person has been confirmed as the assassin of President Kennedy. This is in the aftermath. This is the funeral. This is his grieving widow, his brother, his children. Little Jack Jr., John F. Kennedy Jr. is a 3-year-old boy there, and he very famously salutes his father's casket as it goes by. So trauma in the Kennedy family. This is even before Bobby is assassinated, right? Bobby's going to be assassinated 5 years later. So there's plenty of trauma in the Kennedy family. John F. Kennedy Jr., you know what happens to him? Dies in a plane crash in 1998. Trauma in the Kennedy family. It's just because you're rich and famous doesn't mean you're going to have
She was
trauma.
like-
This is Kennedy's grave to this day, and it is at Arlington Cemetery, and with it is an eternal flame. So that's true. As he, when he was buried, of course, when he was buried, his wife lights this flame, and it's been lit ever since. It's got this like eternal gas flow, right? Just like if you ride a propane tank. It's got this constant gas flow where the flame has been lit for over 50 years now. It's called an eternal flame. So this is President Kennedy. This is his wife. Okay, she joined him there in burial, and they're actually buried alongside 2 of their children as well. They had an infant die stillborn. They had a child die when it was 1. So it takes me back to, just because you're president doesn't mean you're going to have an easy life. The Kennedys had a plenty hard life. And yeah, boys, I've been there. This is the last time I got to visit Washington, D.C. Recommendations. A book by Bill O'Reilly called Killing Kennedy.
What about that?
Truman. A fictional book by Stephen King. I don't very often recommend fiction. But this book is called 11/22/63. That is the day that Kennedy was shot, right? And the book, it's a fat one, y'all. I think it's like 950 pages. I read it when I was in Afghanistan. It's kind of my leisure book. It is a time travel book. There's a character who's able to go back in time and try to impact the assassination of Kennedy. And it is full of true details. And then, of course, it has a perspective where they change history through the time travel. Very fascinating book. It is also a series on Hulu. So I think it's like a 9-parter on Hulu, 11/22/63. And this is a movie called Killing Kennedy. There's also that movie called Parkland about the hospital that I didn't quite get to, or I don't have a picture for that. So you want to know more, you can know more. There's more to be had. And in fact, as y'all are looking at my notes, or you're looking at the slides, if you were to go into the notes section of most of the slides, there's more information. So if you're wanting to look at more links, I've hyperlinked a whole lot of stuff that's on the notes. I appreciate that you guys are following along, and I'm sure that you're on track, right? I'm sure that you're right on this slide right now. Good story. Kennedy's final, this is from his inauguration, and this is how I'm going to leave his legacy. He says this in his inaugural speech to the country, that we should all ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Attitude of selfless service. Not that I'm owed something, but that my country, but that my country needs me and I can serve my country. All right, rapidly, let's move on to LBJ. He's the VP, becomes the president when Kennedy dies. Gulf of Tonkin, already talked about it. All of Vietnam, Tet, unrest during the home front during Vietnam. He is tired and decides not to run in 1968. Here's new information for you, and I know I'm going to blast through it at this point. Johnson's Great Society. Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers. This is a labor dispute he has to deal with as president. And the National Organization for Women. What do they want?
Now.
Equality. When do they want it?
Now.
All right, I kind of summed that one up already. All right, first of all, he leads through the Civil Rights Act in 1964. This is largely passed due to the emotional support for President Kennedy's wishes. Even though Johnson's the one that had it signed, it was really the Kennedy legacy that gets it passed, in the name of the assassinated president's legacy. Johnson's Great Society. This is a social platform. This is a spending platform. The Great Society is characterized by programs. Many different programs that are designed to help the poor, the elderly, and the sick. Now, on the surface, that certainly sounds like a good thing, right? Who doesn't want to help the poor, the elderly, and the sick?
Yeah.
But hear me on this. What do programs cost?
Money.
Money. Whose money?
American
Tax dollar money, right? So we have a philosophical difference here. Do we want to collect a lot of taxes and divvy up that money to those who need it? Or do you want to earn your own money, keep your own money, help out charitably if you want to, but hey, I earned that money in the first place? Those are philosophical differences. And I don't mean to characterize one as better than the other. That essentially sums up the difference between Republicans and Democrats. It does. Republicans are in favor of lower taxes, spend your own money, and run your own business. Democrats are generally in favor of higher taxes, more programs in order to help the poor, the elderly, and the sick. Now, the criticism of this is that it's going to be very close to socialism, right? If you collect a lot of money, other people's money, and then you redivide it, it's kind of like it's not the iPhone, it's the Wii phone, right? It's our money. So this is very close to socialism because of how many programs there are and how much money each program costs. These are some of the programs. I have a feeling most of you have already seen this slide, so I'm moving on. Criticism is a required major increases in taxes. It is close to socialism, and largely it was deficit spending, spending money we don't even have yet. So if you spend money you don't even have, you just have to hike up the taxes all that much more. People tend to like the money they've earned, so a lot of people didn't appreciate, higher taxes going to the government. So that is a criticism. Good intended, right? If you want me to give you a semi-personal opinion, which I don't often do, I think it's great intentions. Who doesn't want to help the poor, the elderly, and the sick? However, the amount of money that costs and the number of tax dollars required to make these programs go around seem to be like robbery to those who don't want to pay those taxes in the first place. This is where the criticism of taxation is theft comes from. That's an opinion you can come up. That's not my opinion. That's some people's opinion. You can arrive where you want to. Cesar Chavez, this is him. He is Hispanic. Also, our curriculum doesn't call for it, but I want to mention the name Dolores Huerta. Okay, they are two Hispanic civil rights leaders. They are Cesar Chavez and then his counterpart, Dolores Huerta. They are the Hispanic civil rights movement leaders. Very comparable to Martin Luther King Jr. does for the African Americans. What he does for the African Americans, they do for Hispanic farm workers. So their organization is called Union Farm Workers. They are organized to help migrant workers get better pay and working conditions. At the time, migrant workers coming in from his Latin American countries, Mexico and other Latin American countries, were not treated very well. They weren't paid very well. Darn near slave labor, right? You can make an argument that they're being treated and worked not all that different from sharecropping or slave labor. It was a bad time to be a Hispanic laborer. Notable is that very similar to Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez adopts nonviolent protests to advance his message. So the legacy of Gandhi influences Martin Luther King Jr. The legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. impacts Cesar Chavez. This is how the world goes around. This is Dolores Huerta. You can see that they both age into older age, right? This is young Cesar Chavez. They get a little bit older. No assassination involved here. Who they take on directly is the grape industry. So they actually call for a California grape boycott. Many people around the country would buy their grapes from California, and they were unaware of the poor working conditions for these migrant farm workers. So, hey, the chatter, come on, let me finish. So Cesar Chavez, his big movement is he calls for a boycott of California grapes. And it's successful. The country does tend to start boycotting California grapes. And as such, the grape growers had to listen to Chavez, increase migrant worker pay, increase or improve migrant worker working conditions. This is their big motto, is Si se puede. Any Spanish speakers, what does that say? Si se puede. Yes, we can. Right? Si se puede is yes, we can. Huh? So it is an eagle. It's an eagle. It is often.
It's communist.
You bring up a great point. It is just a thread away from the Nazi logo, but it is not associated. Right? It is I think it's an unfortunate coincidence that it kind of looks like Hitler's eagle's nest, but it is not associated with the Nazis. It's just bad coloring.
That is not the
all that kind of stuff.
The eagle nest is where he went and died.
I said it's not associated with Hitler at all, but it looks like Hitler's eagle's nest logo, but it's not associated with that. Hey, let's finish it out here so you can make the comparison. We can do it. That's the Rosie the River attitude. Si se puede. This is the Hispanic American attitude. Here they are flying their flag. President Biden. So let me finish it out. Here's the end of it. You know how the president gets to decorate the Oval Office? He gets to choose what goes in it. A lot of times the portraits he picks or the statues he picks are very significant kind of making a statement on his beliefs. Someone wants to pick a picture of Abraham Lincoln, they're probably saying they align with Lincoln. Someone wants to pick a picture of Andrew Jackson. I mean, I don't know why you would do that because he's a bad president. Point is, in the White House's collection of antiquities, you get to pick how you want to decorate the office. Well, President Biden chooses a bust of Cesar Chavez, and he surrounds it with family photographs on the table directly behind his desk. A lot of people say that the bust of Cesar Chavez indicates Biden's belief in workers' dignity. For all industries, okay, not just migrant workers, but the steel industry, the car industry, fill in the blank. Biden is a friend of the working man. So just kind of interesting that of all the things he could have chosen, he chose a bust of Cesar Chavez to put behind his statue. Last one, the National Organization for Women. What do they want?
Now, equality.
When do they want it? That's right. Now, the criticism, here's their actual purpose statement: to bring women into full participation in the mainstream of American society. Now, exercising all the privileges and responsibilities thereof in truly equal partnership with men. Sounds nice, but criticisms of it, especially coming from, say, a conservative Christian perspective, is that it includes abortion rights. Right? So a lot of people are going to draw the line and say, I can't support that. I'm not in favor of abortion. Equality for women is wonderful, but I cannot support the right to choose. That is a criticism of it. You decide what that means for you. That is a criticism of the National Organization for Women. And that is, I know you guys have already seen this, right? I know you've already seen this. So that is a conclusion of our big conversation, Truman through Johnson, and all the vocab that comes with it. Guys, I beg of you, take charge of your own learning in my absence. Okay, maybe you'll appreciate the shorter spoken session as opposed to my lengthier soliloquies. But either way, whether you like what I have to say or not, you got to put this content in your head. If it's a big block here, if it is a vocab term, not just this page, but you're going to get more next week, it's important. I need you to know that. Okay? Go ahead and tidy up. We got a couple minutes before I can let you go, but tidy up. I'll high five you on the way out the door, and I won't see you till 2 weeks from now.